Okay, so I think HBO Max has something here. I just finished watching the first episode of Welcome to Derry, the prequel to the It movies, and I got some mixed feelings. I don't know if everything I saw here was the best. I got confused at some parts. But honestly, looking at this thing, I think for the most part, this thing is going to be a winner. But Bill Skarsgård fans are going to be really upset because this guy is going to have a very, very absent role from the series. Doing this review without really any spoilers here, I'm going to say the first 5 minutes of the show are definitely very confusing, but genuinely scary. Like, there were some parts where I was like, okay, where is this going? Where is this going? Like, oh, that's where it's going. And it does get freaky. You realize it's slowly progressing and getting weirder and weirder. I think they went a little too gore heavy. I think it was a little weird where it got too silly because that's been a problem with the It movies. They can't really decide if they're trying to be coming of age horror or they're trying to be this, slapstick horror that's, almost kind of funny versus scary. And I watched it and they had true horror going. It was getting progressively scarier. And then they go for this gore thing and it just felt a little dumb. It didn't feel like the smartest move they did. But that scene did do a good job, at least in capturing the series where it's the early 1960s. It feels like the early 1960s, and they do mostly a good job at that. I think one issue with the show is the dialogue. All of the actors, like the clothing looks like the early 60s, the cars look like the early 60s. But the dialogue, it seems like they just kind of throw in a few buzzwords that people in the 60s might have said, and it's almost like the actors feel weird doing it. So I don't know if that's the best, but for the first 5 minutes, they definitely had me at a hook, even though the gore part made me kind of roll my eyes a little bit. But then early on in the first episode, they bring up something which is a military base, which looks like it's going to have a very big part of the plot. And I didn't read the It book. I don't know a lot about the lore behind this, so I don't know if there's any significance to this military base. But what I'm leaning on here is, and this is just a pure prediction, this is not me having any inside information, this is not a spoiler, but I think there's going to be some sort of plot here where Pennywise tries to cause a nuclear war. Like, the fact that Pennywise is alive in It, these characters are probably... So my big thought right here is this is going to have like some sort of Star Wars Rogue One thing in the Stephen King world where there is going to be some sort of military angle that Pennywise is behind. There might be something where Pennywise is trying to get Derry, Maine, or start a nuclear war, and these people are going to stop him but lose their lives in the process. And they're going to be like the main characters in Star Wars Rogue One. These are the people who saved the day, but the world forgot about them. That's just my prediction for the series. That's not a spoiler for this episode, but there is a strong military presence that they're definitely trying to set up here. And I think that's the angle they're going to be going for. Then past that, for the episode itself, I wasn't super impressed. I didn't really like the story or lack of story they were doing. This takes place 4 months after the events of the 5-minute opening. So there's kind of like this, similarity to the first It movie where there's a tragedy and then there's the consequence of that tragedy kind of haunting these main characters. But the characters themselves weren't that interesting. There's sort of a plot behind them, but, there's kind of a build-up there, but they just felt really similar to the ones from the first It movie, so I wasn't actually that big of a fan here. Like, I didn't think any of them had that much personality, and I was like, oh, okay, well, that's this character from It, that's the girl, that's this person, but then things kind of change. So, without doing a curveball, there is a very big ending to this episode. Like, this is I'm going to say a Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon level ending, which had me completely shocked. I didn't think that was going to be the case. And it takes my biggest complaints about what was going on, where, the characters felt too similar, they felt like they lacked personalities. And definitely, I'm not going to have to worry about that anymore. I'm not sure, with what we're going to deal with now. I don't know who the main character to the show is, but yeah, they definitely, threw me for a curveball there. So I'm actually pretty happy with that ending. I think some people might complain, but overall, a really good job. And it did have a good horror element that once again did this It fashion to it, where it starts off genuinely scary, but then they go kind of the gore route, and it felt a little too silly, but it still mostly left me scared. And the final question is just like the make or break to this show. Where is Pennywise? Where is Bill Skarsgård? Because obviously this is It. This is supposed to be, some sort of version of him where he's haunting, and Pennywise is a character we can take multiple forms, But yeah, we want to see the clown. We want to see Bill Skarsgård. We really like that actor. And I have this weird feeling we're not going to see him for a few episodes, or we might not see him until the finale. And I think that could get this show some hate. I think this show's got a good momentum working for it right now, but I think it's one of those things where, like, I look at the show The Acolyte with Star Wars. They have, the ability to put in any character they want to put in, but they save, Darth Plagueis and Yoda for the ending. It's like, oh, we're going to build up season 2 and we're going to show these characters that people have wanted on screen for 20 years in a TV show. We're going to show them, at the end, it's easier for season 2. And nobody wanted that. It's kind of best to just put all your, put everything on the table, put your balls on the table in the first episode. And I think the ending did that because there was enough shock value to keep me invested for episode 2. Like, I was midway through this saying, yeah, I don't think I'm going to watch episode 2. I'm watching episode 2. I'm watching episode 3. I'm watching the finale. But if we don't get some Bill Skarsgård, if we don't get some lore here, I think this thing is going to flop. Like, I think people are going to be pretty upset here, and I don't think this is going to be a good show. So right while making this video, one friend of mine just brought this up. This is my text message with my friend Scoob McCausland. And basically, I brought up the nuclear war thing to him. He's watching the episode right now. So he actually just mentioned this might tie into Stephen King's The Mist. So I don't know a lot about that world either, but this might be something where HBO is trying to build a Stephen King universe, which is kind of cool. Like, there was the Hulu show Castle Rock where they were definitely trying to do that, and it had Bill Skarsgård in it. It looks like, Hulu didn't drag the momentum for it. It looked like they didn't have the rights to all the properties. And also, I just don't think Hulu makes as good of shows as Warner Brothers. So maybe my friend Scoob is right. There is going to be some sort of tie into The Mist. And this could create, Welcome to Derry being the pathway to some sort of bigger Stephen King world that HBO and Warner's trying to do. Because, hey, if they can't get the DC comic universe right, they might as well try to get the Stephen King universe right. Yeah, for Welcome to Derry, if it wasn't for the final 5 to 8 minutes, I would have said this was a 3 or a 4 out of 10. I really was not that engaged. Kind of a cool opening few minutes, didn't love the characters. That final 5 to 8 minutes bought me a second episode there. So I'm going to say this is a 6.5, maybe a 7 for pilots as far as TV shows go. I think where it really won was stylistically, it looks high quality. It feels like a movie. It doesn't feel like a TV show. That's a compliment. And it also did capture the 60s well, even though I don't think the actors are doing such a great job at that. I think they really have to improve that. But overall, I'm going to say this is a win. It's definitely worth a watch. And for me, it's going to get me into, I think, the final episode of this season. Unless the Bill Skarsgård thing is a screw up. If they contracted him saying, oh, hey, Bill, you have other projects, just come in and do 10 minutes, I don't think this is going to work. But I think if they're doing this engaging plot where, it gets into nuclear war, it does the Star Wars Rogue One route, I think this thing can work. But yeah, they really save themselves with the final 5 minutes here. But with that, I'm Charles Perallo. Please subscribe if you... Okay, you didn't learn anything. This was just kind of a review. I think I'm going to do more of these. But anyway, please subscribe. Thanks, man.